Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and here we have a new Boker knife. And you can see it comes in a nice packaging with a nice zipper pouch. And this is the little friend. Now, it has a drop point blade, satin finish. It's actually running this direction instead of up and down in S35VN. I almost said M390. S35VN blade steel. It is a Jesper Voxnaes design, which Jesper Voxnaes is known for making very ergonomic knives, also very useful knives. He's got a lot of knife designs out there. I have quite a few myself. And this one is not a super large knife. It is very similar size to... you know what? I'm not even going to say similar size. It's larger than the Giant Mouse Ace Biblio, but it has a resemblance of that. It's almost, in my opinion, it's an in-between between the Ace Grand and the Ace Biblio. Now, if you know my channel, you know I love my Ace Grand. Just to give you a little bit of a size comparison, I love the Ace Grand. This is a large, full-size knife. Now, this one's going to be obviously a little bit smaller, but it has the same essence of the Ace Grand. Now, we have a flipper deployment, which is a minimal flipper deployment. Great jimping on it. You can see that is very sharp jimping that's going to be very catchy. So, regardless of how slippery your hands are, great deployment on the flipper tab, especially for such a minimal flipper tab. Now, I already feel that it needs to be oiled. I'll say that right off the bat. I'm feeling it has some, you see it when I'm going down, you can see it's kind of like catching in spots. So, we're just going to oil it very quickly. I'm going to use some KPL Heavy and some KPL Original on here. I do always link this down in the description. I highly recommend having KPL or some sort of knife pivot lube, whether you're using Slick 'em All from OCD for EDC. I really like that stuff. And then the KPL. That's the two stuff that I personally use. I do have other stuff from other companies, but I always just find myself gravitating towards these guys. Do a little bit in the bearings with the original. Now let's hopefully this got a little bit better, because this is fresh out of the box. Yes, oh yeah. There's a little spot right there. Maybe it needs to be cleaned a little bit on the inside, but oh, it's going away. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so back to action. So right off the bat, I'm going to say you're probably going to want to oil it. Great access to the lock bar. It does have jimping, but it's kind of weird that the jimping seems like it's on the opposite side of what you need it. You'd think it'd be on this side. It is on this side. A little weird because, you know, you don't really unlock the lock bar right here. You go from the side, which I do not feel the jimping at all, but that's where it's at. You do have the reverse flick, plenty of access to the hole. Works great. And like I said, the access to the lock bar is great. Easy to disengage. The detent is relatively early, but it is easy to get past. Where your notch is for the lock bar is a great placement, because by the time the flipper tab hits you on the way down right there, by the time that hits you, it's past the detent ball and is ready to drop. The thumb deployment is great on this. Lots of access to the thumb, and your thumb kind of just fits right in there. This hole has a nice edge to it, so you know it's nice and catchy whether you're using the reverse flick or the thumb flick. The reverse flick left-handed is going to be great. If you're a left-handed person, no, the clip is not reversible, but if you are a left-handed person, this one's going to be a great one for lefties to reverse flick. Now, the action on the drop, it is on bearings, ceramic cage bearings, I believe. I haven't taken it apart, but I'm pretty sure. I'm going to guess ceramic cage bearings, and it is very smooth on the drop. Pretty centered, pretty well centered. We have, I think it's a brass backspacer. Not a huge fan of that. I do think it is actual brass. Yes, brass backspacer that's kind of polished with a brass pivot collar. The pivot collar looks great. The brass backspacer will add a little bit of weight. Steel liners on both sides, no weight relieving. So it does have a little bit of heft to it. Nothing that I think is too much. The clip is inset with flat screws. Love to see that. Looks like the clip's going to work great. Good amount of tension to it. I don't like T6s, but it is what it is. We do have T6s there. Now, the ergos are pretty comfortable. This is really good in the hand, but it is exactly 4 fingers. If my hands were any bigger, I'd be struggling, and it does feel a little bit forward. However, I have the choil, so I can always choke up, and since the flipper tab is somewhat minimal, I can easily do push cuts very comfortably, so that's going to be awesome. I do believe that the use, performance, and cutting will be relatively good from an ergonomic standpoint. Now the geometry, passing through materials and cutting, it is on the more robust side without being too robust. Thickness behind the edge is, let's see really quick now, the angle could be lower. 20 thousandths behind the edge, but it is a flat grind and it is going to get thicker as you sharpen it. So when I put my angle on here and I sharpen this S35VN blade steel, which we'll talk about in a second, it'll probably be somewhere around 24 thousandths behind the edge. It does have somewhat of a minimal swedge on the top, but nice, durable, strong tip. This tip is not going to be one you're really going to have to worry about too much. However, it will still be really good at utility cuts and things like that. The ergos you get in that type of grip is going to be great. The jimping doesn't really need to be there, to be honest. It doesn't offer too much traction. If they would have made this like this wide, it would work great. But it's so small. There's not enough of it. That's all it is. Grippy jimping, but just not enough of it. So, doesn't matter, regardless. The plunge grind, now, it's okay. They could do it better because you see it's a tapering plunge grind. And it's kind of an illusion because it looks like there's a good choil there. It looks like you can sharpen all the way back to here, but no. The plunge grind starts here and tapers to about right there. Maybe even farther. It's hard to tell. Like I said, it's kind of an illusion. So, sharpening it, I wish they would have made it very obvious where the end of the plunge grind was, but I imagine you're going to get at least 2 good sharpenings before you will hit the plunge grind, from what I think, The G10 is very grippy. It is a good G10, nice texture. Now, the pivot collar has a good look to it. I like the star-shaped pivot collar. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the T6s. S35VN. So, S35VN is a good steel. I like S35VN. I think it's a great steel. Nothing wrong with it. It is considered a premium steel. Not a high premium steel, but it's still a premium steel. It's starting to move its way over to the mid-range category because of all the steels we have and because S35 is so readily available. You guys know how it goes. What was once super steel, winds up becoming mid-grade eventually. Right? So, and that's where S35VN is. It's on its way to becoming a mid-grade steel, if it's not already. I see a blemish in my edge. I kept thinking that was like a smudge. It's actually a blemish. See that right there? I haven't cut anything with this, so yeah, I'm not that worried about it. To me, that's nothing because that'll happen during cutting, but yeah. Anyways, but S35VN. Now, Good steel, holds a great edge, easy to sharpen. You technically don't need to sharpen it with diamonds. Technically, it is an easy steel that you could sharpen in the field on aluminum oxide, natural stones, or whatever. As long as you start with a coarse stone, it'll be fine. Coarse, medium, fine. Now, personally, I don't like to take it to a fine edge or to too fine of an edge. A fine edge is okay. I personally don't like to take it over about 1200 grit. So my favorite is about 600 grit. S35 with a 600 grit edge is amazing, especially if you have a low angle. It has a lot of bite, heck of a lot of bite, and it works great. Now, the reason why I don't like to take it to too high of a grit is because it starts losing that bite. And then even when it is capable of holding the bite at a high grit and, it feels really sticky and everything else, the second I start using it, not the second, but, after I start using it and start really cutting with it, it quickly loses it. And then I have to continue stropping to bring back the bite. And instead of going through all that, I just leave it at a medium grit, and it's easy to maintain, and it holds the bite for much longer. Now, like I was saying, though, you don't need diamonds. I would recommend it, though. I personally would just prefer diamonds with most modern steels. You don't need to, but to me, I think the edges come out usually better and it cuts faster, so on and so forth. But S35VN does respond to stropping very well. So you could strop it back a number of times. It does respond to stropping pretty good, especially if you're using an appropriate grit or an appropriate micron for what you're trying to do. For edge maintenance, I usually recommend 6 micron, 9 to 6 micron. Now, if you're trying to polish or something like that, then yeah, a lower micron is going to be better. But for just regular edge maintenance, during the week you've been using your knife and you just want to tune your edge up, 6 micron is great. But all in all, with this knife, I think it's pretty good. I like it. There's nothing phenomenal about it. It's not something that's just screaming amazement to me. The lockup is nice and early, which I do like. I have a little side to side, but I bet I could tighten that from the pivot. There's no up and down, though, which I do like. No detent lash. The action is good. Nice and smooth on the drop. The ergos are good. It's a good knife all the way around. Like I said, there's just nothing phenomenal about it. There's nothing popping out just screaming to me, like this one. It reminds me of this a lot. This one to me I do like a little bit more, but I did have to cut in my own sharpening choil. So I could argue that one of the downfalls with this one is it had a horrible lock bar access. So I did have to fix that. But this has the beautiful micarta. I love this micarta. The clip works great. The action was amazing. The whole, good access on both sides. There's no flipper tab to get in the way. The blade steel's L-Max, so this had a little bit more going for it. Granted, it was more expensive. Now, this one, if it was done in micarta, I'd probably be more static. If it was done in titanium, I'd probably be more static. It's plain G10, but that's also maybe where it's going to shine. And I say that because it's a user. It's a work knife. It's a tool. And it seems like it'll be a great functioning tool. A great tool that you really don't have to care about too much. And I mean that in a sense that you can toss it around. You can beat on it. If it gets scratched, who cares? And if it comes with a little bit of a blemish out of the box, not a big deal. Access to lock bars, great. It's going to have great action. Pretty comfortable in the hand. Yeah, it's G10, so the angles are a little, bit on the square side, but it's not a big deal at all. And it's going to be a great functioning tool. And it seems like the clip's going to work great too. But there you guys go. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.